Ja, die ook.
En je webcam nog even aanzetten.
Webcam? Ja, maar die webcam is raar.
Deze.
Welke is de webcam dan? Dat is, dat is de... Heb ik nog al gedaan?
Ja, dat is goed.
Ja?
Yes. I think this should work. It probably works well. Otherwise, you can alert me in the chat if I'm not hearable for you. We have people coming in. Let's close the doors. Okay, welcome everybody. We're setting up and we have a large crowd here for the afternoon. We welcome Frederik. We will be conducting an experimental presentation, I think, about the OCTT, the OCPP compliance testing tool. And Frederik has an update. So Frederik, the floor is yours.
Okay, yeah, welcome. I'm not sure. I hope I'm audible online as well. If not, then please let Martijn know. Yeah, we have a very short presentation. I would like to keep this as interactive if possible. So if you have questions, let me know. Would like to just give you an update on where we are with the tool, and also yeah, show a little bit on what's in the release that we are about to deploy. Well, basically right now. And also, yeah, if there are any questions, give a little bit of a, let's say, a glimpse on where we're heading, what should be coming, let's say, the next 3-6 months. Yeah, like I said, if you have questions, let me know. Hopefully we'll also switch to the next one. Yeah, so like I said, a very brief introduction. What is it, for those that don't know yet? Secondly, we would like to explain a little bit on how the subscription model works, or how the pricing model structure works, because I think we get quite some questions on that. Thirdly, it's yeah, where are we? Then a little bit on what are we going to release today, and a little bit of a demo of what we are releasing today, just so that, you know, either the ones that are using it, they can see what's coming after today, and the rest can see it for the first time. And if there are questions, well, we have some time at the end, but if you have some questions right away, then just raise your hand, I would say. And I think Martijn also, if there are questions online, you will raise your hand, I guess. So yeah, let me very brief introduction. What is it? Well, it is a OCTT OCPP conformance test tool, which means two things. So let me get here, because a lot of let me see if I can get the automation. So basically, the main purpose is you validate your own implementation. That's the idea why we have brought the tool. I mean, we were hoping since the publication of OCPP that some commercial party would adopt this and bring out the tool there itself. However, this has not happened, and therefore we as OCA said, well, it's too important not to be able to validate, that there's a way to validate. So that's why we have started the development of a test tool for that. The other thing is, yeah, it helps you with your development process. So during your development testing, at least there should be something you can test against, so that you know that it works. So on the one thing is the validation for anyone who has completed implementation, and for the test labs on the other hand, it's, well, also a tool that should help you during the development. However, very importantly, it's not a simulator. So we get this question every now and then. Theoretically, if you have two matching scenarios, you could have the tool maybe work against itself, but it's a stateless test tool. It will run a pre-described scenario. It is not a simulator for CS or CSMS. It can run certain functions. You have some utility functions you can use to it, so it's definitely useful. But it runs pre-described scenarios, and those are the test scenarios that we have published on as part of the spec. Yeah, so that's really important to realize. You cannot develop it, I think, or take it and say, well, this, so now I have a CMS to test against. I mean, there are other members that have that kind of solutions. That's explicitly not what you can use it for. So what is it? What is it? I mean, this may be a little bit of a recap for those that have seen the presentation before, but I think it's always important to make sure that we have a good understanding of what it is. So we have OCTT, our test tool, and the test tool basically connects to your CSMS or CS. And then it communicates with that over the WebSocket talking OCPP. I hope I'm not staying in front of the presentation. So the second thing is it has a user interface. So there's a web interface. You as an end user can just interact with it using the web front end and play with it, execute the test cases and see the result. We also have a number of APIs. That's not very known yet, but these APIs are already in the system for a while. We have the ability to, while you're running a test case, instead of telling the end user to swipe a card, we can basically over the REST API, we can tell the device, okay, please act if this card has been swiped. So there's a way, the first step in the automation already for testing, and there will be more, where you can say, okay, while testing, you only have to operate the tool if you implement that REST API, and then the interaction between the device and the person or the EV, it can be simulated, as long as, of course, your implementation also has a simulator in it. But I think most will build that. Then the most interesting part, and that is grayed out still because it's not yet available, is we're working on a full API also to run the test cases. And so that we can also, you can also use that tool in the future for integration with your CI/CD. So let's say the API is almost finished. Technically, it's, I would say, 95% there, but we still have to test it. We still need to work with a number of parties to really make sure that it's stable, because we've also seen that if you run test cases at a very high pace, that sometimes your automated test will just stop working. So we still have some associated stability items that we need to work on. So the various, sorry, yeah?
For EVM API, where can you find the documentation for that?
I will show that, but it is in the tool. So I will show that there's a link and there's some hidden documentation. This is a very, very nice example of, well, we have built the tool in general, and then we decided, we came to the conclusion, well, there's some additional information we would like to share. So where can we put it? And most importantly, how can we plug it in so that we don't need to change the application itself? So right now, some of this is a little bit of a hidden information, and we're also working on improving that. But the information, there is information there. So I will that's one of the things I want to show, because I don't think everybody will know about it. So basically, this is the whole tool. I mean, the tool talks to your device or CSMS. You can have the simulator operated by the tool, and then, yeah, I think some people already asked questions about it. This API, we've also explained it last Plugfest. It's a little bit more work, but also we've really focused on some other things, as you can see from what we're now going to release in this release. That, well, we had to postpone this one for a while, unfortunately. I'm not sure of the questions. One thing I wanted to cover, and I think it's important to at least talk a lot about this. Obviously, a tool costs money, because it costs money for the team, for OCA to run the team that actually develops it. And we've also tried to come to a model where you basically pay for your use. So if you're a small user, you basically have to pay less than another, let's say, larger organizations. But also, we've been trying to come up with a model where you pay for basically really what you use. So we now know a pretty complex setup where you basically license the test case set, which means, okay, you have the right to use the test cases. That's a one-time payment that you have to pay for, and then we make sure that we run the number of copies of the tool that you have, that you would like in the cloud. So we host the tool, and for that hosting, of course, OCA incurs costs, I mean, support, and then the compute power. So that's the second part you need to pay. So the model is like a two-tier model. You pay one-time a license, then depending on the amount, the number of instances, we call them, of the tool that you want to use, you pay an additional fee. To avoid people just adding and removing them very often, we have a setup fee. That's just to make sure that we don't have a lot of going on and off. And I think one of the other important things is that to realize that if you want to test multiple devices, but you only have one tester, or you don't do that at the same time, one instance should be sufficient. Do you have a large test or development team and you want 3-4 persons to test simultaneously, you will have to have multiple instances. So the instance, as we call it, is capable of, it's a single user application. You can still access it with multiple users, but it can only run one test at a time. That's a historic reason. That's how the application has been developed initially, before we ever had a vision of hosting it in the cloud. This was kind of a design choice that's now hard to, well, let's say, change. So at this moment, if you want to run the application, you want to test one device at a time, one instance is sufficient. That means you have to pay for the license one time and then a yearly fee for us running the test tool and supporting it, and is also put on the slide there for providing the updates and answering to your support tickets. So this is a simple, let's say, pretty simple, straightforward. And now we only have OCPP2.0.1. In the future, we will add, and that's by the end of the year, we plan to add version 1.6 to replace the current OCPP toolkit. That means if you want to have both, you will have a single application, and you can have 1 or 2 test cases depending on all the license you've purchased. Still, the instance limitation remains. So if you have both licenses, you can only test 1 device at a time. So there's a lot of flexibility so that smaller startups can have a minimum cost, and if you're very large, then you have multiple instances. And then we try to create the flexibility that way. Yeah, like I said, 1.6, and you can already see there's the pricing structure, which is, I think, published already on the site as well. At this moment, these are the prices. I think it's very important to realize that at the end of the year, when we have the full set of test cases available, most likely also these prices will be revised, because when we launched the tool, I mean, we did not have the amount of test cases available that we have now. So these prices will change. So the sooner you purchase, the more likely you will still pay this lower prices. Yeah, like I already said, be aware it's a single user application. So if you try to use it with 2 users at the same time, it's fine. You can look, but you cannot start two test cases at the same time. So that's, you cannot, I mean, it's a single session you're basically in. If there are questions, let me know, or send an email to the info@Open Charge Alliance, because yeah, like I said, we're covering it here because we get a lot of questions. It's more complex than we hoped for. So basically, what's going to be next? So we are working on a tool. So I think everybody knows the spec was launched in 2020. So we have started developing. We, as of last November, we have launched a tool. It's available. I think we have now, I think close to, well, I think about 100 different instances running on our servers. So, like I said, it doesn't mean 100 organizations using it, but quite a few. So the tool is available since November, still increasing use. Since June, we're very happy that we started the certification program for OCPP 2.0.1 core and advanced security. That also meant a lot for the development team, because that basically meant that all of the test cases are in a state that we can publish them, can share them. We were still validating them, but this is one of the things also we released today is a release that contains all the test cases that were part of that first certification program. So that has been our first focus for the last couple of months, and we have noticed that the challenge on our end is that we have to make the tool very flexible to cater for all the different interpretations and flows that you guys can think of, how you want to interpret or build your OCPP flows or the communication. So that's a little bit of a challenge on our end. We were very happy with the launch of the certification program, because it also meant that we had the first bulk of test cases ready. And then the next stage at this moment is also was set on, I think on Tuesday, and I think Paul also mentioned it in his presentation today. The next stage is we really want to work towards the February timeline, when we want to have the full certification program for OCPP 2.0.1 opened. That means also that we have to make sure that all the test cases work. So that's our target at this moment for, let's say, the near future. Anyway, before we hit that, we do want to release another intermediate release, which does contain the CI/CD APIs. So we want to make that available earlier, but also to release the 1.6 version test cases. They are in test. During the Plugfest, we had 3 of our developers that were actually participating in the Plugfest with a development version, which is almost complete. So just to test it out, proof. I'm not sure if anyone here has been testing with them, but the 1.6, I think most of the on-site 1.6 should have encountered them. And then, of course, in the end, if we I already said that this was focusing on the core and advanced security, and this is now focusing on all of the release, all of the certification profiles. And in the end, of course, the next step will be for next year. Once OCPP2.1 is published, we have to add this to the system as well. So that's kind of the roadmap that we're in. And of course, these dates are one and tentative, but I think there are some pretty strong incentives for all of us to make sure that we get the February timeline at least, so we have we're in time for the US NEVI funding circus to start. So that's kind of the high-level roadmap. Then, if you look at what we are deploying today, well, one of the things which is kind of a small thing, but for, let's say, for us, it was kind of work, is we've renamed it, because before we called it OCTT2. However, now that we are moving everything into this single tool, single platform, we're now referring to the tool as OCTT. It still works for us to change, obviously, but I think more importantly, we now have almost 500 test cases in the tool. Well, it's 494 actually, but all of that means that everything from advanced security for CSMS is in the tool. There have been 13 test cases that we could not release yet for CS, and these are niche things where we have just not encountered any implementation. One example is the number of signed meter values test cases. We can mock that, fine, we can test it, but we really want to have a charger that's actually supporting that, tested with, and then we add it. So that's kind of the way we work. So we don't want to release test cases that have not been tested against a real implementation. Another thing is that we have many stability changes on the tool. We've noticed, and some of you probably have raised all kinds of tickets where the application gives a 503 or is just not responding. A lot of improvements are done also in that area where we are making this thing more stable. Does not yet mean that they're all gone, but again, we're making a big step forward with some structural changes in that area, and then the next release will include some more of it in there. The other thing is a lot of functional changes.
Oh, Frederik,
Yes.
I have a question. The OCTT is efficient as we are a real environment with multiple EV. Let's see, that's a question by Murat Bouzafara. I'm looking at Paul. How do you interpret this question?
There was somebody who says there's no audio. Just checking that the audio.
Oh no, people can ask questions when they want. I don't think it's. No, it's just working. I can see the bars going up. So it may be a local problem.
Do we have a question?
But if otherwise, please note if there is no audio still. But maybe you can proceed. But I had a question, but I don't understand it that much. But proceed. We will get back to it after the presentation.
Let's do it at the end. Let's do the online questions maybe at the end, unless you have a clear question.
Yep.
Because if there are questions, then we should answer them, obviously. Let's move back. So there's quite a number of functional changes also for the end user. So you'll be able to see which test case you have already passed in the earlier when you're testing. So try to make the tester a little bit more easier. We have also added some changes in the execution screen and the report screen to add comments, to download the actual log that you see there, because we've also noticed that sometimes not everything is in the files that you can download, but you can actually now capture exactly what's there. We have, not even there, we have a log viewer. So we've got all kinds of functional changes that you just need to play with. We improved the existing API already, that we now can also do machine-to-machine authentication, not only username password, but also some token, which was asked for by some of the groups that were already playing with the API. So there's a lot of functional changes besides, I think, almost increasing the amount of test cases with another 100 or so. Yeah, and this will continue. We have an idea of what will be in the next release. We're planning this release to be available before the end of this year, and there's a little bit of uncertainty also again here, because we want to make sure that we have more test cases. Well, that's the easy part, because even today we could already add one more. However, we would like to add 106 test cases, so there's still work on our end. We need to support multiple versions of OCPP and AM to the for the test cases for 1.6, also the same applies. We have to test them against real chargers. That's a lot easier with 1.6, but to actually raise the bar a little bit higher, we want to test these test cases against certified test case devices, so that you know when we have the opportunity now. So if you have the 1.6, then you know that the test cases are running against certified devices, so that we also can be sure that the discrepancy between the old and the new tool is not that large. I mean, there will be some fixes, there will be some changes, so some test cases will behave slightly different because we have improved some of the test cases or fixed them. But also we have to make sure that it still passes with, most of it at least pass with an already certified device, because I think that's what people expect if you have the 1.6. Would be a bit of a pity if now a certified device would not pass. We also adding some additional functionality for the test labs, because what we see is the 1.6 had roughly 130, 140 test cases in total. Now we're now, I think, close to 400 test cases. So the amount of tests for the test labs, if you want to certify, is also increasing well, drastically. So we're going to make their life a little bit easier with doing some functionality, which you can also see now, but also some integration with the PICs that you have to fill in when you want to go to certify. That will make sure that the increased amount of details that you now have during that whole process of getting certified with all the optional features and the hardware feature sets that your device supports is properly loaded into the tool, rather than somebody doing that manual and then at the end of the process have to decide, oh, oops, I forgot something. So we're also looking at these aspects to make the amount of time that the lab requires for testing, but also to reduce that, but also to make sure that the whole setup work and the reporting stuff that you could automate, that is mostly automated, so that in the end the amount of time for certification spent by the test lab is reduced, and therefore the costs are reduced. Another thing is extend, like I said, we extended API, add the CI/CD integration. The idea really is that you could automate your firmware release for the charger or your CSMS release, that you can do an automated test with the tool. There's still work on our end, is already set. And then, like I just said, we have these multiple OCPP version support. One thing I skipped, but it's a very important one. As Paul also said, we will be continuing the whole process of opening the certification program for 2.0.1 for the other profiles. So also from that process, obviously more test cases will become available, and we'll also work with a group of beta testers to make sure that we get intermediate releases more often, so we can have the well, we can get the feedback the sooner, because this is one of the challenges we have all the time. We need feedback, so we need people using the tool. We get the feedback, we fix the things. If we have the mistakes on all sides, there are mismatches even in the spec we sometimes notice, and all those things have to come together into the next release. Then want to give a next demo, looking a little bit at Milan if that's safe, but I think so. Then let me see if I can get the share the interface. See where it is. Yeah, there it is. Reversal. Let me move to the other side of the table if it works. I have already logged in, so don't waste time with that. But so we have a demo release. So basically, when you enter the system right now, it's a choice. Am I going to test a CSMS or a SIA charging station? Some minor changes on this interface already. One of the changes is that we now have some more documentation links here immediately. These also switch. So if you if I open up the test cases HTML now, then I get the one with the test cases for the charging for the CSMS, and then very simple but neat feature. If I switch this to the charging station, then I would get the other documentation. And this link is always available, doesn't matter where you are, just so that you can easily get to this document, because well, there's a lot of stuff, let's say, depending on this. One thing, I just heard a question on the documentation. So we have this little hidden link here about us. So if you click on that, there is some additional documentation there. Two things I would like to point out. So one thing is the security configuration. So security is pretty complex. We know that. Each instance has its own set of certificates, so that you don't, in general, you could work with that. You don't have to set that up. You could use that. We realized that just using the default certificate is not enough. So you can download a zip file here, which contains all the stores, but also all the key files and all the certificates that are used by the tool, so that you could use that to create, for example, your own charging station certificate, if you don't do that via the API, via the function of OCPP. And then that way you can also easily, or hopefully more easily, use security profile tree. So you don't have to worry about a lot of this stuff. You can easily reuse those certificates. Of course, within the constraints of OCPP, that your station serial number should be in the common name. I mean, that's still remaining. So this is one thing I wanted to point out. Of course, there's a password, and then here you can also find the default password. The other thing is we have the API documentation in here. It's a Swagger generated API documentation. So there is documentation here that you can use with. It's a very simple REST API. Want to plug in the EVC or the cable, want to plug it in, plug it out, do an authorize, basically mimic the swiping of a card. Simple API, documentation is there, easy to find within the tool, and as the API progresses, then we can also easily change, update it, and you can select here between the 3 different APIs available. This actually is already available in the current version, but we're not sure that a lot of people have already found it, so that's why I'm pointing it out. Well, like I said, this is a little bit of a hidden thing. We knew this is it's there because this is where we could put it easily without bothering our development team of the tool. It's on the bottom. That's why it's pretty hidden, but there's the About Us link on the bottom. This is kind of a hack. You could put the documentation there. It's there, and we need to improve that. One of the other improvements is that we, on the production version, if you click on the version number, this is an internal version, so it has an empty release page, but on the production version, you will find the changelog here. So the changelog is also more accessible, and we're making small steps every time again to improve there, but I can imagine that this whole link here is not very easy to find. So if you look at the application itself, so you normally select the CSMS, and then I think I need to, so you have the whole configuration here for the CSMS. There are many things you can configure. Well, sorry? There's a drop down of the, yeah, it's already there, but I don't think it is actually doing anything, but no, let's say, but normally you can have multiple. So we have not fully thought through yet how the OCPP version will be integrated. However, most likely on the first screen, not here anymore. So this is already 2.0.1 specific. That being said, I do not know what will happen next when we move into OCPP 2.1, since the differences there are minor. So we didn't even think about it yet. So that's in progress. We have all kinds of thoughts, but it's not there yet. So one of the things I wanted to point out, so if you look here, you can simply enable the API here. Then you have to provide I cannot enable it now because it's default config, but then you have to enter the API URL here. You can have your security key here, and you can the username and password, or the secret, and then you can select here whether your API requires no authentication, username, password, or a bearer token, the authorization HTTP header. So there are 3 kinds of things. So that's new functionality that's there. So if you move into, I'll just take the pre-configured configuration. You always have to save your configuration. That's how the tool works. Basically, it checks it and then saves your updates. So normally when you start testing, you always have to, this is the execution screen, you always have to start a test session. And then that's very interesting. I cannot connect to the WebSocket, so I'm not sure, Milan, what I'm doing wrong, but am I in the wrong? Sorry? Sorry?
See a spelling mistake. Could not connect to your set. The HTTP connection was not up to date.
Yeah, we know. That's actually a regression issue. It was fixed already, the typo, but should I try again? Still not. So I think it's the so. It should work both, but I'm not sure. Should I reload the configuration, Milan, or?
We're trying to communicate with CSMS.
You're still looking at it, or?
Trying to connect with CSMS.
I'm CSMS, yeah. So we're trying to reach out to the CSMS with Insecure. So one of the new things I wanted to show is that if you now look at the list of test cases, you see these circles. They're white because on this environment these have never been tested, but there's one green, which means that test case was passed. So basically, while testing, this is the new one of the new things that you can actually see while testing. You have already executed this test case for this configuration profile. So this is a status tied into the configuration profile. So if you want to do multiple test runs, you have to create one configuration profile per test run, and you can pretty easily keep track here already. Okay, did I pass it? Then it's green. Did I fail it? Then it's a red one. Then I think if it's inconclusive, then it's a purple. However, there's some logic because this is actually intended for the test labs. So if you ever pass it, then it will never go back from past. So those kinds of small things, but you could remove the log again, and then it will go back. So this is one part of the new functionality that we actually have this status here. So makes it hopefully easier for people testing a lot of things. We have some new functionality also that you can, but I need to finish the test case first. You can add a comment here, so that you can add it to the log, and then that way we can actually, if you have some comments in during the testing, some observations, it will be added to the log file, so you can actually keep things together. We have added this button, the clear output, because sometimes that is useful. Not sure what I can now connect. I could. It connects and it disconnects, Milan. Should I move to the CS one? Because that's the same idea. And anyway, it's also possible now to just So this is a nice example. I've not run a test case, so I don't have a log. If I would like to send this to somebody else, then now I can just click on the save output, and it will download this output as a file, so you can easily share it. Not sure if everybody knows, we have a lot of additional functions here, so you can perform certain functions, and it's of course limited for the CSMS. We have a lot more functions here for CS, but that was already there. So if I move to the set CS, let's see what happens. Then I think things are a little bit different because I should be able to take that one, save the config, start the session, and then the charger should connect. Not sure whether that's, and as I just said, you have a lot more functions here. Just utility function, clear cache, empty your local authorization lists. There are some reservations clearing. There's some functionality to set the start and stop point to the values you configured in the configuration file. So we have a lot of small functions there that we found handy. And as you can see here, so the charging station is connecting. So we have the connection, and now can do the same like I did before. Just look at the test case that we've been running before. Because there's another thing I wanted to show with running something is, so normally you just run a test case just by pressing the execute. Then you see a lot of messages, and it's still waiting. So great, it passes, very nice. So this went fine. So one of the things I wanted to point out is the use of the API, because actually this is a test case that normally requires some kind of interaction. And then you may have already seen scrolling by the blue boxes. So instead of prompting, so you stop that. Yeah, I need to disable this one, right? So if you so normally if you are not using the API, you will get a pop-up, and then it requires you as a user to say, okay, you did it, you made a prompt. So, and if you use the API, as I just said, the one of those EVSE or EV APIs, you can it actually sends the command to the charger, and then the charger will behave as expected, or should have behaved as expected. So that eases the test process already. I mean, if you have to run 200 test cases, you don't have to plug in a cable, plug it out, swipe the card, but just select the test case, run test it. It's a lot faster.
Yes, these API calls simulate command, for example.
Yeah, the API is a lot more extensive. So for EVSE, it's a small set of commands. I can show them in a minute, but the API for CSMS is more complex. Yes. Yeah, indeed. So, and that means also that the API is a lot more expensive or extensive. And of course, whether that makes sense for you to implement depends on your use case. So this is this is just a fully automated test run now against a charger or virtual charger running somewhere in the cloud. There's some other nice feature. What we think it's nice is if you have selected the test case here and you press on this button, then okay, it opens the exact test case description. It takes a little bit of time because I first time opened this document, but it will jump to the right test case. And then the next we think is a nice feature is then actually, okay, it's linking to the requirements in the spec. So you click on the spec and then it opens up the spec. Again, it takes a bit of time because it's a huge document, but it jumps to that specific requirement. So if you're in doubt why it's not working or why the test case is failing, we have some functionality there to look up the relevant documentation. And one of the things we do, and that's also why I'm not sure whether you, it's not very visible, but as you can see, there's a big draft behind because the version we include is always the latest version. And that also means that this version of the spec, not this one, but in general, may be ahead of the officially published versions. So those are the versions that are normally published internally only for members. But we have to make sure that this version, but also the test case document, the description in here is in line with the test case. The execution of the test case we have implemented. That is not necessarily the same as the published version because there could be errata. So the errata are processed here as quickly as possible, so that we know for sure that if there's a change in the test case for whatever reason, that everything is in sync. Yeah, I think the test case execution. Well, the other thing is, like I said, we have the comment field, so you can just add a just add some text here, save it, which is then added to the log, and then you can find it back. So if you go to the reports page, you basically see all of the test cases that are executed. New functionality, you can now look for the test cases for a specific test case, so it makes it very easy to find back some test case that you once did. Another new function is you can obviously easily switch from CS to CSMS, and you can also filter it based on the configuration profile. So that way you can find back what you did. You can now remove a specific log file that will then influence again the statistics, the light bulbs. You can look at the comments. So I just put in a comment here. So there's my comment I can see. So if you're working, you can keep that stuff. You can download an individual file, and we've also included a log viewer, so you can actually in a format. These are formatted, so you actually see it like it's in the user interface, just to make the testing work a little bit easier. So those are kind of changes included in the release, apart from additional test cases. Yeah, and then I'm not sure. I don't think I mentioned that, but if you look at the test run, then if you only want to have the core test cases, then fine, you just select the core test case, and then here the list will only contain core test cases. So it helps a little bit to focus on just if you want to prepare for certification, you can filter on the profiles. Any questions? Martijn?
I have an online question.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Louder?
You, yes.
Yeah, I know.
we don't hear the mic.
I will try. Let's see. Regarding OCPP 1.6 test cases, will we have one tool to test 1.6 and 2.0, or will you be enhancing the OCTT 1.6?
The idea is, so the question is, how will we provide 1.6 test cases? Will it be one tool? Will we integrate it here, or will we be enhancing the current tool? We have taken the decision because the old tool is about 8+ years old now, and we have developed a new tool for 2.0.1 that has a lot more functionality. So the short answer is it will be in a new tool because this has a lot more. I think that this is structurally a different tool which has the APIs already there. It has some first steps of automation, and it also is easier for OCA to maintain a single platform. So again, I mean, we're funding this by the tool purchases and the contributions of members. So we need to cut costs or use the financial means we have as efficient as possible. So in due time, the old tool will be decommissioned and everything will be migrated to the new tool. That's the plan.
Okay, then I have a question by Johannes Papadopoulos. So is OCTT going to be an online tool which we could use by going on a web page without having to install it on a PC? And could I connect the OCTT to my charging station and press a button to automatically test all test cases included in the core profile, for example? Or does it require to be a user interactive process for every single test case?
There's two questions. So question one is it hosted locally on the cloud? So the new solution is hosted in the cloud, so that we can make sure that when we do an update, we always have the latest version. So OCA hosts it. That also ensures that we always have one version out, and that we don't have to worry about the different implementations. The other question was about can you just hook up your charger and test everything automatically by the push of a button? At this moment, that is not yet there, also not yet foreseen. What I've just shown on the demo is you can automate the interaction with the charger already. So that basically means that your testing would be selecting a test case, of course, using the API, select the test case with the right configuration. You can then just click a test case and hit start, and the test case would run fully automatically. But still, yes, manually, you will have to test. You have to select each test case manually. That's step one. That's where we are now. Next stage is we want to enable CI/CD integration. So that means if you have a Jenkins or probably also GitHub work actions, you should be able to automate that in a certain way. We're working on a REST API so that you can actually run all of the test cases automatically. The next step could be, but that is not on the roadmap now, that you actually just do a full run. We haven't thought about it yet because we have so much other stuff on our plate that is not yet on the top of the list. But we're trying to enable you to do that yourself first. So you can have open source CI/CD applications that actually do this and integrate this pretty quickly yourself. So
Very nice for integration tests. If you could get like a list of all the test cases and one API to execute.
That is one of the API calls. So basically you can request the list of test cases from the tool. Yeah. Then you get a JSON message back that contains the test cases, the profile, the description. The tricky part, which we also have seen with that, is you will have to make sure that the configuration matches. So you may have to change your configuration for certain test cases. If you want to test RSA certificates, the tool needs to be configured with RSA certificates. If you want to switch to ecliptic curve, you still have to upload a new configuration. All of that can be automated, yeah, but there is some minor interaction still needed also there.
Which user it might use for your, if you only have like one user, doesn't use different.
You have to, well, you can basically pre-cook most of that by, I would say, using different configurations. So, I mean, you can easily just add a new, well, I cannot change it now because session is running, but you can work around it. You can have everything pre-cooked, but still you need to select the config and then run your test cases for that one.
Any other questions? Yeah. Please state your name.
Hi, Volkert, Fastnet. First of all, with the pricing at the beginning, maybe I misunderstood, but you said it's you pay and then it's valid for the rest of the year. Do you mean calendar year or the year starting from the moment that you purchase the license?
Now, like I say, there's a two-tiered model. So you need to purchase, you need to have you need to purchase the license for your test case set once.
Yes.
So today you purchase your license for 2.0.1, then you have that license and you will always have that license. The cost for the instance are basically monthly. So basically what happens if you purchase today, then you will pay for the rest of September till the end of the year. And then at the end of the calendar the year, you will renew or stop. So that's what we mean with till the end of the year. So when you purchase now, you pay the amount due till the end of the year for us to run it. And then you can decide whether you want to renew next year.
Yeah, okay, but then you only get billed for the months.
The remaining months in the current calendar year.
Yeah,
That's,
okay. Yeah, so it's not like it sounded like that you would be much more better off purchasing it in January than in December. But
no, no, it's it's
pro
rata.
It's billed per month.
So the costs are pro rata. And the only thing we do is because it's also difficult for OCA to sometimes force people to pay. I mean, there's a hard deadline. So if you now purchase the tool, you will get a confirmation. This is your user ID. This is your URL, and the tool runs till that date, which is now 31st of January. 31st of December. If you don't pay before that date, it will shut off automatically. So on January 1st, after you've had your rest, you can no longer log in. So you need, but it's always
you need to renew it.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks. And one follow-up question. I was not at the previous talk about the certification, but the pricing that is mentioned here is separate from the certification pricing, or is that unified?
It's your choice whether you want to use the tool to test or you find another better tool or another way to test it yourself. So the purchase of the tool is very convenient because you know that the test lab is using the same tool. So they're running the same tests, but it's not mandatory to purchase. And also you can purchase the tool once and then you can certify 20 devices. So those costs are completely separate. So when you certify, I think there are two components, right, Paul? So you pay for the test lab for the testing, and then in the end, it's the issuing of the certificate that you pay a fee to OCA for.
Right. So those are two different
Yes.
expenditures. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
One moment. We have so people at home can hear your question as well. Please state your name.
My name is Andras from Greenflux, and what I would like to ask is, do you have any SLAs or anything related to uptime on the tool for the pricing?
In the license agreement, there is a definition of the support, and that includes the response time. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wanted to know because we had some downtime issues recently, and sometimes it took a couple of days even to fix our instances. So that's why hopefully the stability improvements will help with that.
Yeah, so in general, as you know, OCA is not for profit, so we also made that clear. We do our utmost to respond as fast as possible. I think also in your case, we see certain things that maybe we should have a separate discussion on because we see that the memory usage of your instance is just increasing, and then so that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, but as you're triggering something in our environment that we don't understand. So we need, therefore, we ask for input. What is the test case you did? What's the last one that worked? When did it stop failing? So we need that kind of help also from you as a member that we can improve the tool. We are normally working NL business hours. So, and then let's say, so if you report something on the Friday evening, yes, it will take till Monday, definitely. But I think there's several things happening. We also, unfortunately, we're still working on the stability of the tool as well. And we need your help as well. I mean, if you get the more information you could provide us upfront, the better. We do have response times indeed also in the document. But in the end, there are, I would say, objectives more than we have a very hard target because it's difficult for us also to commit something because it's not OCA OCA is not an organization.
Yeah,
It's OCA. OCA is not an organization that has a
Just because
24/7 service.
we haven't, or I at least haven't seen the SLAs in the documentation or anything like
No.
that. I was wondering if you.
Now, the last appendix, Appendix B, I think it is, on the SaaS agreement includes the, let's say the response types.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We were running out of schedule. If you have any burning questions, or perhaps after the session, you can still talk to Frederik, of course, or Paul, or Milan in the back, and that should work as well. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to close this session. Thank you, Frederik.
Thank you.
For your presentation. And I'll see you at the next Blockfest.
Okay. Thanks.